Hello and welcome to Football Manager 2023 Roleplay, a project where we will create a player using the FM3 game editor, give him a potential ability of 200 and see if he will become the greatest American footballer ever. Unlike many videos on YouTube, we will not be managing a club and we will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world building exercise where FM23 provides the events and we build a story around these events. As you can see, Henry Marshall has improved 4 points in his current rating, all the way up from 121 to 125, despite some poor games. But they weren't horrible games. He didn't get a red match rating, but they were poor games near the end of the MLS season. Marshall's contract with Atlanta United ends on December 31st, 2024, and as you can see, we're already at October 4th, 2024. And after that, Henry Marshall will head off to Liverpool FC in the Premier League. We are now 33 games into the MLS season. Atlanta has one more game. They're trying to hold on here to their third place finish. They want to stay there up high. They want a first round game to be played at home. But their last game of the regular season on the road, that game is against Austin. Austin, the number one team in Major League Soccer, and the winners of the Supporters Shield. How will the playoffs go for Henry Marshall? Move ahead, and I'll fill you in on Henry's last games with the MLS. And we'll be right back. And we are back. So let's go ahead and catch you up with everything that has been happening in October. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, Atlanta visited Austin. Atlanta number 3 in the Eastern Conference, Austin number 1. The result was a 1-1 draw, which ended the season. And it was another low-scoring affair for Atlanta United. Marshall's a 6-7 match rating. Okay, a little bit of weaknesses there on the back line. Georgios Kiukamakis, and he had a scoring slump so bad in the early part of the season that the press felt compelled to talk about it a lot. He finally opens up in the 90th minute and manages to steal that 1 point as game time is expiring. So, what were the standings at the end of October 7th? Because there was a meaningless FC Dallas St. Louis City match on Monday. Let's see if there's a way to get to those here. Yep, here we are. Here are the standings. Number 5, Miami, will end up visiting number 4, Atlanta United, on October 19th. This is going to be the very first round of the Eastern Conference semifinals. And from this moment on, every game Henry Marshall plays could potentially be his last game for Atlanta. The winner of this game, as you can see, is going to play number 1 Charlotte FC in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Let's roll up. We have Henry Kessler. He gets a Player of the Week from Major League Soccer. But Henry Marshall, as it turns out, is going to be busy. Yes, he has been named to the U.S. men's soccer team. So he gets a chance to add a few caps. They will head off to South Africa and for a match, a friendly against that nation's team. And then they'll come back home for another friendly against Trinidad and Tobago. So while everybody else is preparing for the playoffs, he will be off internationally. The game at South Africa, that was a 5-1 win by the USA team. I'm not going to talk about it because Henry Marshall pretty much sat on the bench for the entire game. I mean, you think with the U.S. winning 5-1, they would give the guy some time, but no, he just sat on his ass and he watched the U.S.'s offensive display. Yunus Musa had 2 goals for the U.S. Then he came back to L.A. and played the game against Trinidad and Tobago. And there is another comfortable win, 3-0 for the USA. And Marshall didn't play in that game either. Yeah, the U.S. men's soccer team, very stingy, not giving out any caps. You will see that Fernando Ortiz is the first postseason firing. Ortiz is out there. His LA Galaxy finished 21st overall in the Supporter Shield. And you will see that, if you can find it here, there he is, 19-year-old Noah Cobb. He'll be out 2 to 3 weeks for the ankle injury. Some international awards coming up. Robert Lewandowski of Barcelona. He wins the Ballon d'Or. Gabriel Martinelli of Arsenal. Kylian Mbappe of PSG, second and third. Pedri wins the Copa Trophy. His teammate, Lewandowski's teammate at Barcelona. And Gianluigi Donnarumma, he wins the goalkeeping Yashin Trophy. So there are international winners. So up next, we're going to have this first game, the Inter Miami game, Atlanta United, Inter Miami. The MLS playoffs begin. Number 4, Atlanta. Number 5, Inter Miami at Atlanta. And what happens? They win in the MLS Eastern Conference first round. It is a 2-1 victory. Windy day, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's Fowler and Balogun's penalty in the 60th minute that puts Atlanta United up for good, and it sends them on to Charlotte. Marshall had a decent 6-9 in that game, 6-9 match rating, but horrible news for Atlanta. Martin Pace, down here, he has an injury here in the 29th minute, and he is third in the MLS with clean sheets. He had 13 clean sheets this season. There is an injury blow for him, out 6 weeks, hamstring strain during the game against Inter Miami. He's already not happy there. That loss to Atlanta cost Juan Carlos Osorio his job, and his last duty as Inter Miami's gaffer was the post-game press conference. After that press conference, he was given the axe by Inter Miami in a phone call. If we could find Marcelino Marino here, look at him again here. Marino, 7-1, a goal. He would end up making MLS Team of the Week for his performance. And let's take a look at Captain Luis Araujo right here. Had an assist, match rating 7-7. Was he a player of the game in that one? Yes, he was. He was a player of the match. Not only was he a player of the match, this was his 141st game for the Five Stripes. And that sets the club record. He beats out Brad Guzan's 140 appearances between 2017 and 2023. Now, Atlanta will move on to play Charlotte, the number 1 team in the East. They have 11 days to get ready for that game. Let's do a little side note here, if we can. This is Jonathan Wynn. This is Henry Marshall's best friend. And as you can see, he has now been released from St. Louis City Academy. He is now playing for BlackRock. Now, what is BlackRock? BlackRock is a team of amateurs playing in USL2 in Massachusetts. And Jonathan's hoping to get noticed by somebody, but BlackRock, that's sort of a career dead end. Well, at least it's an amateur club. It at least gives Jonathan a chance for some kind of NCAA scholarship in the future. Now, let's go ahead and move back to where we were, if we can, as we head toward the 30th. There's the appearances record. Another team of the week. And Moreno, there's his team of the week announcement. And now we're getting ready for this Atlanta-Charlotte match. They have to go to Charlotte for that game. There will be other games on the 30th. There will be an Eastern semifinals match between Canadian teams Toronto and Montreal. And the Western Conference is already, they're already doing their finals. The finals of the Western Conference will be between Real Salt Lake and Portland. So we go number 4 Atlanta versus number 1 Charlotte. And Charlotte win that one 2-0 as Marshall bids farewell to Atlanta United. 1,200 fans came to see this game. He couldn't, as I said, he could not end his 5 strikes career on a high. Bank American Stadium. Atlanta loses that game 2-0. He has a decent 6.8 rating. Yeah, only 1 corner kick in the entire game. Not a lot of opportunities. Whereas Charlotte just basically had a lot of opportunities, not a lot of possession. Garces substituting for pace, a 6.1 in goal. It's the way the season's been all year for Atlanta. So Charlotte will play Montreal in the East Final, and Portland won the Western Conference final in extra time. So it's going to be Portland versus Charlotte or Montreal for the MLS Cup. He quits himself. No one in Atlanta really rose to the occasion here. And we'll go back here and see that under Charlotte, this 8.0 rating, a nice clean sheet from Christian Kalina, who is Croatian. Let's go back to the head. Heath has decided to leave Minnesota United. He's out. And what we thought was going to happen, happened. Wilfred Nancy, on November 1st, the Axeman finally comes for Wilfred Nancy, fired by Atlanta United after a tumultuous season. Now, supposedly the club had given him a warning of their displeasure with how he was handling things at the club and all the drama. And the message was he was going to have to do well in the playoffs, and he didn't. An odd little story behind this. November 1st was the day that the Atlanta United players were scheduled to meet with the coach. Most clubs do. At the end of the season, you meet with your coach for sort of a summing up on the rest of the year. What you did great this year, what you didn't do great this year, what you thought of the team, what's going to happen next year. And that meeting was canceled at 8 a.m. We got it by a text. When Henry found out, he texted Wilfred Nancy, thanked him for his time in Atlanta United. And a day later, because Wilfred Nancy obviously was very busy that day, Wilfred actually called Henry, and he said it was a pleasure working for him. Pleasure not working with him, rather. And then he said that Henry's going to do big things in Liverpool. He just said, be quiet. Learn all you can. It's a different culture, so you're going to get used to it. When your moment comes up at Liverpool, step up. And really, Henry didn't even get that much of a chance to say goodbye to his fellow players. Just a handful of people that were there, because everybody was going to clean out their lockers on their own time, as he was. Looking back, all I can say about Atlanta United was the fans were great. The club, the club has too much drama in it. So now that we've ended Henry's tenure at Atlanta United, and we will set our social media follow on Atlanta United. I've already gone ahead and done this. I set the follow on Atlanta United from extensive to normal. And I begin following Liverpool, and I have now set their follow stuff up to normal. So let's go ahead and do some little building. We have here at the very bottom that Ryan Schmetzer, he is the boss. He needs to face a squad to play Kuwait on the 3rd of November, and we'll see whether or not he picks Henry Marshall. But good world building. We are now, or will soon be, at November 5th, 2024. And there is a U.S. presidential election at that time. Now, Joe Biden, he ran for his second term with Kamala Harris. as his vice presidential nominee. Donald Trump. Trump won the nomination, and he picked Kristi Noem. She is a Republican governor from South Dakota as his vice presidential candidate. She would be the first female Republican, well, not the first, the second actually, the second female Republican vice presidential uh, candidate. Sarah Palin was the first one. Um, what was this 2024 election like? Well, if you saw and paid attention to the US 2020 election, it was pretty much the same thing. It was a replay of the divisiveness of of the election, that last election, and the one before that one. And the renewed effort, the framing that the Republican Party chose, was that Biden's win in 2020 was irrelevant due to COVID. Now, there was one new line of contention, and this was the Phoenix Agreements. And we'll explain the Phoenix Agreements in a little while. So, how did the Republicans do? Well, they were able to take back Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but they lost 274, 264 in the Electoral College. And Biden won almost the same percentage of the overall popular vote as he had before. He won plus 3.5% of the popular vote to the plus 4.5 we had won in 2020. Now, The Onion, you've heard the satirical website The Onion. They had a great headline. The headline was "Doddering Senile Hack Defeats Fat Neo-Fascist." And with the states, there were some plans from the Republicans to submit alternative electors. But the problem was all the states that were won by Biden were firmly under control of Democratic governors. The plans for submitting these alternate slates didn't come to any fruition. Now, if you look at the map, the Republicans hoped that they could get Georgia swung over to the Republican side. And Georgia had decided narrowly for Biden a second time. But the Georgia Republicans just wouldn't go along with the plan. There were protest actions by MAGA supporters. They came to no end. And Donald Trump claimed mass fraud by the deep state, and he stated that he would plan to run again in 2028. And about a couple of weeks after that election, 175 nations signed the Phoenix Agreements. Now, the Phoenix Agreements were an agreement to clean up plastic waste around the world. This is going to be a legally binding international agreement with a move away from plastics and towards more biodegradable materials, with an ocean cleanup initiative, which would intercept and remove plastics and microplastics from rivers and lakes and oceans. Now, there was a question as to whether or not this meeting would have any impact at all, because during the presidential campaign, Trump claimed the Phoenix Agreement was a sign of liberal overreach that would, quote, leave American businesses a smoking crater. And he threatened that his first act in the White House would be to withdraw from the Phoenix Agreements. But Biden won, and he signed the Phoenix Agreements. Otherwhere across the world of football, let's see if we can find it here. Let's see. May have to kind of go up a little bit to try to find that one. Yes, Bradley Carnell, Henry's old manager, was fired from St. Louis City. He would later take over at the LA Galaxy later on this year. Goal 50 released their 50 best players in the world. And you can see who the top three are right here. Lewandowski from Barcelona, 36 years old. Kylian Mbappe, PSG, 25. And Pedri from Barcelona at 21 years old. On November 10th, Portland would win the MLS Cup. They would win with a 1-0 home victory against Charlotte. And Henry Marshall would be picked by the U.S. Men's national team. They would play in Children's Mercy Park in Kansas City, Kansas, against Kuwait. Various awards here. Yunus Musa, he won the U.S. Soccer Player of the Year, followed by Chris Reynolds and Keaton Parks. And now to the game on the 13th, the Kuwait game. It was a friendly country 3-0 win for the United States. The U.S. had 35 shots on goal in that game. It was basically a glorified practice session. Henry Marshall, however, he struggled with a 6-1 position starting here in left back, but he got to play the entire game, and he did pick up his third U.S. cap. And now let's just go here at the top. Now, on November 21st, 2024, which is the date that we're at, Henry Marshall has finally turned 18 years old. Now, by this time, he had moved out of his corporate apartment in Atlanta. He was back in Shreveport, Louisiana, and he was staying with his family, living back in his old room at the house. Now, Marshall knew at the beginning of January 2025 he was going to be off to Liverpool. Now, the club didn't want him to show up in the 2025 because Atlanta, he was still under Atlanta contract with Atlanta, and they technically still held his rights, But they gave him some background as to what was going to happen once he transitioned over to Liverpool. Now, clearly, they told him they didn't expect him to start for the number because Liverpool. Let's see if we can actually look at Liverpool here. I'm sure we can. Is the number one team in the Premier League. 11 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. It's going to be hard to break into that lineup. Now, whether he'd even be placed on Liverpool's roster is another question. And it was very likely that he would probably be moved down to the under 21 squad. Now, look at all these guys, who are basically loaned out on that squad. A lot of empty spaces here, including his friend from the Olympics, Kenny Perman, who has been loaned out to Hull. The plan for Henry was that he was going to stay very short term with a host family somewhere in Liverpool. Now, he would stay with this host family until either April the 30th or until he found an apartment, whichever came first. Now, by that time, by the end of April, he'd be pretty familiar with what was expected of him at Liverpool, and he could decide his options from there. And if necessary, the player liaison officer, could give him some advice if he needed it. Now, as a birthday present, he got a phone call from, of all people. Let's see if I can find him. Luis Araujo. You remember Luis Araujo? Yes, he was the captain. The captain of Atlanta United. He got a phone call from him on his birthday, and Henry and Luis talked to each other for about an hour. They talked about the whole Wilfried Nancy firing, and Araujo told Henry, he said, look, there was a lot going on in that club that you just weren't being told. Now, Henry had wondered if it was Nancy's idea for Henry to leave Atlanta United because Henry thought that maybe Nancy doesn't like me. Maybe he wants to get rid of all the players that don't like me. And that's why I'm going off to Liverpool. And Araujo said he didn't think so. He said, I think you were too good to stay here. That everyone knew it. They were surprised you were so good. I mean, we thought there were questions, about your mentality and your could you last on the field, and were you going to be a failure, that we got stuck with. But you didn't kiss Nancy's ass. You didn't cause any problem. Now, mind you, sometimes you played like shit. But I saw worse players in MLS than you. MLS is cheap. They don't want to spend money. That's why people want out, so they can get better deals. Nancy, he always made it personal. And Liverpool picking you up, that was no surprise. Henry had always wished, that he didn't tell Louise this though, but he told her he always wished that some older player would have taken him under his wing. So he basically spent the call talking to Araujo and picking his brain about European play. And Araujo told him that they expected English players to be tough, hard men, So you may have to become whatever they want you to be. And Uya told him, if you have trouble, just watch the captain of the club. The captain will set the standard for behavior. You do what the captain does. You look to the captain if you want to know how to dress or how to act or how to do something. And Louise said, look, USA fans, they're just glad to cheer for a football game. But in England and like in Brazil or in Europe, football is life or death to the fans. And the fans will be up your ass in a second if you can't perform. But Louise, he said he told Henry that he thought he was a great player. He thought that he would make it at Liverpool. Maybe he needed a little bit more training to make it, but he couldn't see why Henry couldn't succeed. He wished him the best of luck in Liverpool, and he really, really hoped that Henry did fine there. So that was very good news. A very nice gesture from Henry Marshall. And why did that happen? Well, I don't know. If we go back to Henry Marshall here and look at him, a short list. Watch this and personal details. Well, guess who's one of his favorite people now? Luis Araujo. So, very nice there. Henry Marshall, now 18 years old. And that's the end of this episode. Next time, our goal is to get to the end of 2024 and get Henry Marshall to Liverpool. Anyway, if you like what you hear or see, make a comment or hit the like and or subscribe button. Until next time.